Welcome, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about the esoteric approach and understanding of Easter. Easter is the festival of the risen and living Christ, the head of the Trans-Himalayan hierarchy, the inaugurator of the kingdom of God and the expression of God's love. On this day, the spiritual hierarchy which he guides and directs will be universally recognized. Humanity's relation to it emphasized, and the nature of God's love registered. Men and women everywhere will invoke that love with its power to produce resurrection and spiritual livingness. So about resurrection, let me share some words by Helena Rourke as written to her pupils. She wrote to them saying, "Let us look forward to Easter, the holiday of spirit and heart. We shall keep a strict spiritual fast in order that we may in complete purity of body and spirit welcome the eve of Easter, the resurrection of the Spirit. Let us aspire in all of our thoughts toward this near future, and many of the dull and difficult things of daily life will be eased in our hearts because we will accept the unavoidable blows and difficulties as a part of a great probationership and will live in the joy of the coming future." She wrote, "After Golgotha comes the resurrection and the great exaltation of the Spirit. This was indicated in all the mysteries. Therefore, even joy is aflame in our hearts. We know the great pledge of the stronghold of light. We measure the signs of trust. And we know the victorious shield. Our spirit cannot be frightened by any battles. And we even have learned to love them because what else can so temper the spirit, excuse me, and test our abilities and bring us greater experience for the crown of fulfillment. And so we may once more say, blessed are the obstacles, by them we grow." She goes on to say something most remarkable, and even though it was written in 1935, it is still important for us today. She wrote, "The destiny of the world is in the hands of humanity. The planet can be saved only if there is a resurrection of spirit, only if the consciousness is liberated from the phantoms of the past and directed toward the construction of the new world based on a new understanding of cooperation and knowledge." I have a Buddhist parable that I'd like to share this morning. This parable touches on the theme of spiritual renewal and transformation. The Buddhist concept of rebirth is distinct from the Christian concept of resurrection. Buddhism emphasizes the continuous cycle of rebirth, also called samsara, driven by karma. Buddhism emphasizes the continuous cycle of rebirth driven by karma, rather than a singular event of rising from the dead. Interesting, right? However, we can explore this parable, which touches on the theme of spiritual renewal and transformation, and share some of the themes that overlap. So here's the parable. It's titled The Burnt Seed. Our farmer once found a seed, charred and blackened from a wildfire that had swept through his fields. It looked lifeless, a mere piece of carbon. Discarding it seemed like the obvious choice, but a thicket of curiosity stirred within him. Instead of throwing it away, he gently placed it in fertile soil, watered it, and exposed it to the sun. Days turned into weeks, and nothing seemed to happen. The farmer began to doubt his intuition, yet he continued to care for the soil, driven by a quiet, persistent hope. Then, one morning, a tiny sprout emerged, pushing through the blackened shell. Slowly it unfurled, revealing vibrant green leaves. The farmer watched in amazement as the burnt seed transformed into a thriving plant, stronger and more resilient than any other in his field. He realized that what had appeared dead held within it the potential for new life, a testament to the enduring nature of growth and renewal. Similarly, within each of us, there are burnt seeds, the scars of past experiences, the remnants of suffering, and the seemingly extinguished flames of our spirit. But the Buddha taught that even in the midst of darkness, the potential for awakening, the renewal of spiritual life remains. Through mindfulness, compassion, and the cultivation of wisdom, those seemingly dead areas of our spirit can grow again. We can overcome suffering, and we can find a new life. So we can see that resurrection, or the cycle of rebirth, is the fundamental theme of all world religions, past, present, and the future. Resurrection of the spirit in man in all forms, in all kingdoms. Resurrection of the spirit is the objective of the entire evolutionary process, and it involves liberation from materialism and also from selfishness. Now, the festival of Easter is determined always by the date of the first full moon of spring, which was April 12th. The eyes and thoughts of humanity now must be fixed on life, not death. Good Friday will no longer be a factor in the life of the churches. Easter will be the great Western festival. The celebration of Easter is the celebration of resurrection. The most recognized activity with Easter is the fact of resurrection. It was by the resurrection of Christ that humanity was to gain knowledge. The knowledge that there is no death for the person who would walk the path of the Master. The path of the Master is the one path demonstrated by all the great ones sent to earth by God to illumine humanity. The note and message sounded by the Christ last on earth was resurrection. But so morbid has been humanity and its immersion in disillusionment that the emphasis upon life has been laid upon death. Resurrection is only acclaimed on the day of Easter. This must change. Religion must teach about the resurrection of spirit on a daily basis, not only on Easter or at the cemetery, but the meaning of resurrection will unfold in this century, and its true significance will be realized. We must stop burying ourselves in death, in materialistic goals, and in selfishness. This will be done through the resurrection of our divinity. Think about that. Think about your own divinity, and then think about the resurrection of your divinity. It is through the reconstruction of our life from material to spiritual that we are going to be born again. We want to reconstruct our lives out of the substance, out of our divine heritage. Now really think about these words. Don't fall asleep. Stay awake. Think about what's being said here. That we want to reconstruct our lives out of the substance of our divine heritage. Not from our past mistakes, not from our darkness, not from our glamours and illusions. We must not construct our lives out of the substance of money or power or greed and hatred, but from the beauty of the central sun. The sun that is reflected in the heart of Christ and other great ones. Those who are recognized as the enlightened ones, the enlightened sons and daughters of God. Let their lives be reflected in our hearts. The heart is the path of resurrection, not the mind, the heart. The path that leads us to the cosmic heart of the universe and returns our soul to the Father's home. There is the greatest ideal of freedom in the words given to us by Christ. These are the words, "Take your cross and follow after me." Now, the cross is symbolic of our past incarnations. So we are being told to take our karma through the events of all those who were sent to earth by God to show us the way. The way is through the path of initiations, which the teachings tell us are the birth to Bethlehem, the baptism, transfiguration, the crucifixion, revelation, the decision, and finally the true resurrection initiation. We are told in the teachings that the birth in Bethlehem is the realization of the call of our inner presence. The baptism is purification of our astral or emotional body. Transfiguration is the initiation of enlightenment, where we unfold our mind, our higher mind, and finally receive a vision of our true essence, of our divinity. We become flooded at this point, at this initiation, the third initiation, the transfiguration initiation, we become flooded with the great light and love from our chalice. So that's the third initiation. The crucifixion is also known as the renunciation. So what is the disciple renouncing? I know the fourth initiation seems so far into the future, but maybe not as far as we imagine. So we need to know these things, that what we are renouncing is this selfishness. This is very simple. The selfishness of the personality will. In the Orient, the great renunciation is known as a sacrifice, and its call in the death to the death of the lower nature. This was the lesson which St. Paul knew of, and the goal toward which he strove. He said, I die daily. He said, for only in the practice of death daily undergone can the final death be met and endured. So the fifth initiation, the revelation, is a stage of consciousness or initiation where we meet our true self and we become the embodiment of will and power. We become now a member of the great brotherhood of Sirius. This is the stage of self-mastery. The sixth path, this is very important to us this year, 2025. The sixth stage of the path is called the decision, where the master must choose between the 7 paths of higher evolution to determine the field of service. We are told that this year, 2025, is the year of decision, where the great trans-Himalayan hierarchy will make a decision. Some will move on, some will stay with us and manifest the changing plan. Once this great decision occurs, tremendous changes occur on the planet because of the energy. They release or withdraw due to their position. The masters are talking about here, that they release or withdraw due to their position on the planet. So great shifts of consciousness are going to be taking place not only in the trans-Himalayan hierarchy, but also with humanity. The 7th stage is called the true resurrection initiation, in which our soul finds his way back to the Father. The cross symbolizes the 4 elements of our personality, our physical, etheric, emotional, and mental elements. Now, to achieve freedom from this cross, and I like to call it the cross of karma, we must undergo. To achieve this freedom, we must undergo crucifixion. The step prior to the crucifixion initiation is called the transfiguration initiation, where we have become purified in all of our motives and freed from our heavenly karma, our heavy karma. It is at this stage where an initiate is able to consciously contact the light of the inner presence, talking about the transfiguration initiation, the third. Becoming infused with that most beautiful light. Through the process of purification, our human soul becomes conscious of and is oriented now toward higher goals, living a life of pure service. This is the stage that is recognized in the teaching as the first major initiation, or the transfiguration initiation. The next stage of the path of Christ we must follow is this stage, and then the crucifixion, then the great renunciation. When Christ said, "Take your cross and follow after me," he was instructing us to travel the path of illumination, the path of freedom. If we are seeking self-realization, there will come a point in life where we, as a human soul, must realize that we must undergo crucifixion, where we seek emancipation from the cross as Christ did. The greatest victory in this earthly world is not to die on the cross, but to resurrect ourselves from the cross. So what part of us is going to experience crucifixion? The lower nature, finally. The lower nature. Crucifixion is to totally dominate and conquer our lower nature. When we conquer our lower nature, it is then we are in freedom. It is only in freedom that we truly exist. Remember, Christ said, "You are God's, and the Most High lives within you." This means if God is within you, I can do anything. The Christ within us can free us from our jealousies, our petty thoughts, our inferior complexes, from our hopelessness and despair, even free us from all of our stupidities. We are here to try to free ourselves, but also to free others. It is such a wonderful experience and wonderful joy to see people free. Buddha, another son of God, said, all of you have the Buddha nature within you. What is the Buddha nature? It is the universal spirit, wisdom, love, and beauty. So we must crucify our lower nature, our depressions, our complexes, our slavery, and achieve freedom from these things. There's the most beautiful story about St. Sergius, who gave an example of Christ's words. He said, "Do not worry about what you are going to eat tomorrow." Some of St. Sergius' monks began to complain to him that he had built his hermitage way too far from a sufficient water supply. St. Sergius said to them, "But I wanted to live alone. Yet God wanted to establish a monastery to the glory of his name." He then left the monastery, accompanied by one monk, going down into a little ravine where there was a little water left from the rain. St. Sergius knelt down and prayed. Then he blessed the spot. And I'm sure you know this story because I've said this before. Suddenly, a plentiful spring shot up, which supplied water for the monastery up to the present day. And another example about St. Sergius' ashram. The monastery was once again without bread for several days. And some of the monks requested permission to go ask for bread in the neighboring villages. They said, "We have followed you, we have obeyed your orders, but tomorrow we're going to go look for food. We will not return because we cannot bear the poverty and lack of food in this place." Can you imagine? They were reminded of the words of Christ from the gospel, and St. Sergius reproached them for their lack of faith. St. Sergius, in speaking from Matthew, said, "Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet the Heavenly Father feeds them." As St. Sergius was talking to the monks, someone knocked on the door, and the gatekeeper looked through the opening and saw a cart full of food. St. Sergius bade them to open the gate and receive the goods. 2 full carts of food entered. But St. Sergius did not eat anything. Instead, he went to thank God. Only after giving thanks did he bless the bread and distribute the breads to the entire community. On the 2 days following, large quantities of food continued to arrive. From that day on, there was never any discontent among the monks over food or water. You see, they were resurrected from their doubts, their complaints, their lack of faith. They became enlightened by the illumined life of St. Sergius. Isn't that beautiful? It's such a beautiful story. Resurrection for us today is the process of resurrecting ourselves in a continuing manner, moving steadily toward a union with our true self. Resurrection is the process of spiritualizing ourselves, transmuting the lower nature with the light, beauty, and love of our higher nature, becoming more spirit than matter. A resurrected consciousness is one whose life is focused in the higher worlds while they serve in the lower worlds. It is the process of resurrection that creates a spiritual balance for the serving disciple. A disciple cannot be a balanced individual without the resurrection of the Spirit. So it is in resurrection that we will gain victory over darkness, that we will gain victory over all that is not serving the life of the soul. To gain victory means to use the outer world, the outer life, as a vehicle for transformation. In other words, as a vehicle for illumination and enlightenment. In conclusion, we are on that path of resurrection, which will lead us into a new and higher dimension, into the inner world of reality and right energy. It is a world in which only the spiritual body can function, and only the intuitive, developed eye of spirit can see. It cannot be perceived by those whose inner perception is unawakened and whose intuition is sleeping. When the spiritual body begins to be organized and to grow, and when the intuitive eye slowly opens and trains itself to see truly, then there will come the indications that the seed of our divinity, of Christ, latent in each human soul, is beginning to control and to lead the developing spark into the world of spiritual being, true meaning, and essential values. This world is called the supermundane, the world of souls, and when manifested is the expression of the divine life, which we can call the fifth kingdom in nature. It is through the process of initiation that this world stands revealed. Thank you.